What's the wildest thing you've ever seen happen at a work Christmas party? Two junior accountants, both quiet types, got into a screaming match over who was the bigger Nickelback fan. It ended with one of them throwing a plate of mini quiches at the other. Security had to separate them. Best party ever. Story 2. A drunken colleague telling the company owner his wife was ugly and then said, "If I had a nose like yours, I wouldn't underline it with a mustache." Never saw him again. Story 3. Me. I'm the wildest thing that ever happened at a company holiday party. I worked the closing shift, so arrived late after all the food and drinks were done. Stone cold sober, I hit the dance floor and soon broke a sweat. I wore a silicone breast prosthetic in my left bra cup due to Poland syndrome. I glanced down and noticed it was no longer in place and had slid out under my dress and disappeared onto the crowded dance floor. I swiftly pulled a ninja exit and slipped out of the party. Next business day, coworkers were talking about the dance floor turning into a slip and slide for some unknown reason, wreaking havoc at the party. No one was seriously injured, but that's my confession for today. Story 4. I worked at a company in Scotland a few years ago, and every year something unexpected happened at them. The most mental incident I remember was one year a woman in her mid-20s hit the free bar before the meal and got really drunk really quickly. She started mouthing off to people, sat on her table, and swearing at anyone she looked at. Eventually, a director of the company came over and asked her to leave. Instead, she took her shoe off and attacked him with the stiletto heel. She was restrained, the police were called, and she spent the night in jail. What made the situation even more crazy was it was only her third day at the company. She started on the Monday and the party was on Wednesday. Safe to say she was fired. I'm not sure if she was charged. Story 5. Two of my colleagues were divorced from each other and the woman was dating another guy at work. At the party, the new guy was baiting the ex, so the ex bit the new guy on the face. At the same party, my married with 3 young kids boss, whose wife was battling cancer, turned up with an escort. Story 6. Charge nurse stuck her tongue in my ear and told me my wife was hot and that we should all party together sometime. Walked up to someone's hotel room for the after party and opened the door to a full-blown sex underway, which unsurprisingly included said charge nurse. Went to Waffle House instead. Story 7. Worked for a very large Japanese company. Company party is where I learned that in Japan, it is an insult to not get completely wasted when they throw a party. Management that was usually very uptight were completely unhinged. Back to normal on Monday. Story 8. One of our managers was so incensed that only for the first hour was booze covered by the corporate tab. Beer and wine was covered for the whole party, but this Christmas event was for a brewery. Manager was all, "I don't want free beer, I want booze." Decided that his best move was to load up on booze in the 1 hour. Double shot after double shot as some form of protest. The protest being that the rule promoted dangerous drinking behavior. He got carted out about 15 minutes after the hour was up, around 7 p.m. Me, the manager was me. Story 9. Huge company. Global. You've heard of it. Offices in every country, basically. Our state had a company Christmas party for the employees in the entire state, and everyone from the grunts to the top leaders showed up. One guy and his date were at a table full of just barely above interns, and the date was trying to convince the guy to hit the dance floor. She kept assuring him the dance floor was too big for anyone to notice him. He kept saying he was a terrible and embarrassing dancer. She assured him she'd love him no matter how bad he danced, and nobody would make fun of him. All the table agreed and kept chanting, "Dance, Jackson, dance," while his friends hooted that he must be really terrible if he was fighting this hard. Night goes on, and after a few hours he finally joins his date on the dance floor. The CEO quietly walks behind them, and as he's walking by says, "Damn, Jackson, you really can't dance." Never even broke his stride. Anyways, turned out well for Jackson because the CEO learned his name from that and watched his work, liked what he saw. And over the next few years, he ended up getting promoted to mid-level before being poached by another company, and now is upper management. He did actually really suck at dancing too. Story 10. One year it was an entire family invited event that a Santa was hired to for all the kids. Long story short, one of the accounting ladies went with the guy playing Santa. Linda from accounting got caught due BJ to Santa in the bathroom. Story 11. I was a college intern and very naive about the work world. An older coworker got drunk and told me about everyone in the office he had hooked up with. It opened my eyes to work dynamics. Story 12. The CEO stumbling out of the bathroom with substances spilled all over the floor. Then trying to get different women to have a group sex with his secretary that he was secretly ducking. Story 13. I was at a Christmas party back in the late 80s where they hired a band, had a huge spread of food, and a couple of 6-foot tables filled with bottles of alcohol and mixers. This 20-something kid had lined up like 10 shot glasses in a row and was making B-52 shots, splashing the alcohol and ingredients as he zipped the bottles up and down the row. He was sharing these shots with the owner's son and a group of co-workers. And soon the owner's son was so blasted he slipped and fell in the middle of showing off the ring he'd just proposed to his fiancée with. And as she watched her future husband struggle to get back up, the kid serving him the drinks helped him back to his feet, excused himself, and then headed to the dance floor. This kid starts dancing with another half-drunk co-worker, and they're swing dancing pretty exuberantly until their hands slip on a spin out from a twirl that sends her crashing into the drum kit. This poor girl was sprawled ass up in the middle of the drums and mic stands. Just a mess. He helps her up and makes apologies and tries to help the band put their drum kit back together, but the drummer says it's okay, they got it, and shoos him away. He goes off wandering among the crowd, talking with his co-worker friends, and later, as the party is winding down, the owner announces into the microphone that everyone should grab a bottle of alcohol to take home, any food left from the buffet, and to make sure they got home safe. Most everyone is grabbing 1 or 2 bottles and plates of cookies on the way out, and this kid grabbed a couple of bottles as well. Only he must have been waiting for a ride, as he was one of the last ones to leave. As everyone was saying their goodbyes and driving off, there was still a lot of bottles left, so he grabs a couple more and starts making a nice pile outside the exit door. Then he goes back for a couple more, seeing as how there's still a lot left on the table, and then a couple more, and then a couple more after that. I lost track of how many times he went back and forth, ferrying bottles. Soon they lock up and he's standing outside waiting for his ride, who is pretty late at this point, and he's obviously embarrassed at having taken so many bottles that he has them grouped together as tightly as possible, and he's got his long black winter coat over them, trying his best to act as if A, he doesn't know who might have pilfered enough whiskey and vodka to start a neighborhood bar, and B, that he's not freezing under the snowy wind. The owner, his son, and fiancé lock up, come out to get in their car, and notice him standing there, huddled in his shirt sleeves against the building to cut the wind, and call out asking him if he needs a ride or if they can call a cab. He politely declines, says no, he's all right, thanks, and Merry Christmas, so they ask if he's sure. He says his friend is on the way to come pick him up, and he'll be okay, thanks again, he's good. They shrug and say, okay, well, good night, and then they go on their way. As soon as they pull out of the parking lot, he gets his coat on, and then suddenly his friend pulls up and he asks him to open the trunk and help him get all this packed up. His buddy looks at him like, what the heck? And he says, please, just help me load up. I'll explain in the car. I was thinking about all this as I woke the next day, sprawled out on my living room floor, surrounded by about or so bottles of whiskey and vodka, still shivering in my coat that I hadn't taken off before I passed out last night. As all of it came flooding back into my pickled brain, I remembered the owner's son telling me, as we clinked shot glasses, that we got to party more often, cowboy. Let me write down my number and we'll do this again, man. I reached into the pocket of my jeans and fished out his number, and after a moment, to make sure I wasn't going to throw up, I found my phone and called him. He picked up after a few rings and he croaked a cracked, hello? That sounded as rough as I felt. I launched into my apology, admitting that I just woke up in the floor of my apt and realized I'd stolen their entire bar. But he stopped me and said, oh man, don't even sweat it, please. Keep it all. We've been laughing about this ever since we left last night. It's the funniest thing we've ever seen. We're just glad you're okay. We hated to leave you in the snow, but we saw your ride pull up, so we knew you were going to be okay. Dude, that was the best company party ever. But next year, I'm making the drinks. Yours were way too strong. Story 14. My husband was a research scientist for a big pharmaceutical company. Most of his colleagues were PhD level, kind of geeky, serious, bit pudgy, wore glasses. But at the Christmas party at a fancy hotel, the bar was open. The DJ started playing Who Let the Dogs Out? These People Let Loose. Story 15. Saw the best ranked marketing exec get so wasted at the bar before the actual party even started that they threw her over a shoulder and carried her out in full view of the entire company. She never returned to work after that. No one could believe that was her. Story 16. My wife works for a small company, boutique clientele with a stellar reputation. The very last Christmas party, I was a part of the incident. Owner's daughter, an accomplished, bright, attractive woman, gets into a heated argument with her soon-to-be ex-husband regarding her affair with the top salesman who is standing at the bar. Now, there are about 250 people in attendance. Live band, open bar. Great food, too. So, argument moves outside. Salesman, daughter, husband, a few other people. A few minutes later, the owner asks me to come outside, maybe help stop a fight. I did that and thought it was over. Nope. The party gets going again. Really going. Wife and I are on the dance floor with maybe 50 other people. The owner's married affair. Having daughters also on the floor only several drinks later. We're all friends. She's dancing with us. Between us. Also against us. It got weird fast. Then the lights came up mid-song as Daddy takes the mic, and there's his smart, attractive, accomplished, affair-having daughter grinding against myself while grabbing her own boobs, facing my wife, who's having a great time. That was the last company Christmas party, and the daughter is now in charge and doing great. Story 17. Open bar, so everybody was wasted. One woman, recently divorced, was taking on all comers in the venue's toilets. The sales exec had white powder all under his nose and stopped even bothering to go to the bathroom to do a line. Was cutting it up on the table in the middle of the party. The boss's wife was in a smaller room, but by no means private or empty, getting it on with a 20-year-old intern. The boss was in another room with a young secretary getting up to much the same. Eventually, the boss stumbled upon his wife and they had a stand-up screaming match while the intern zipped up and slunk off. Several people smoking cigars in a room and refusing to take them outside. They somehow managed to set the curtains on fire. More than one person passed out, including a lady who was found by the cleaners the next day asleep behind a couch. The venue staff just gave up after a while. Especially as a long-termer, explained that this was pretty much par for the course, and the only reason we'd booked the venue was because our company was banned from pretty much everywhere else. The bit that stands out, though, is the middle-aged, nerdy accountant type who chucked a wobbly about 3 o'clock in the morning when the staff locked the bars down and refused to serve any more booze. He got so angry that he jumped up on a table, dropped his trousers, and had a huge crap. The table overbalanced halfway through, and he struggled to get back up because his trousers were knotted around his ankles. Most people were gone or passed out at this point, but those of us left just watched and cheered him on. The staff were shouting at him, but none of them would go near him because of the crap everywhere. While the staff were busy with that, some of us managed to get back into the locked bar and stole a lot of bottles of spirits and beer and random bottles of stuff in a big plastic tub and get it into one of the bedrooms where the party continued. 2 weeks later, everybody back at work. No one ever mentioned it again until next December, when it was fondly remembered as the year to beat. Good times, folks, good times. Story 18. It's not that wild, but I worked at a radio station and an employee was leaving a Christmas event in the radio station's remote vehicle and got a DUI, so the radio station's vehicle with all the signs and decals was impounded. It made the paper. Story 19. I once worked for a large third-party logistics company. The culture was already very bro-tactic, but the Christmas parties were very Wolf of Wall Street. Imagine a room full of geared-up, coked-out, new money alpha bros with soap opera-level drama and stunted emotional IQ. I did not miss the toxic atmosphere full of men screaming at each other and Jerry Springer-style fights between affair partners and spouses. And yes, at one point it was clear that the company hired local hot workers as actual employees like in HR and stuff to enhance the culture of the company. They would be eye candy for the sales team and supply in teams with whatever would keep them productive 24/7, 365. Everyone knew what was going on, but you just don't advertise it. We were encouraged to send in pics from the event. It was a formal cocktail party. There was a professional photographer and videographer as well. These photos would end up in our digital newsletter, up on the TV in our lobby, and in the company's recruiting material. The idea was to show attractive, successful-looking people having fun in group photos. Something cute and aspirational. Very work hard, play hard. So many absolute boneheads sent in photos that you should never show your boss. Getting wrecked and messy, flipping off the camera, making out. Story 20. It's a good one. One year, my law firm hired 3 nearly identical article clerks, basically lawyer interns in their final year of law school. They were all about the same height and build, straight brown hair with bangs, black frame glasses. Nobody could tell them apart for the entire year they were articling with us, even the lawyers they worked directly with. So at the party, they all wore very similar dresses. One or more of them got super ducked up and screamed at the senior partner about what a banana he is. Then, or was it one of the others, tried to get everyone to do Molly in the bathroom with her. Then when HR escorted her, or was it her, to a cab to get her home, she got in a fight with the cab driver, who then refused to drive her, and HR had to wait with her for another cab. The next 2 weeks, we had so many meetings about it. They did countless interviews with everyone at the party trying to figure out who singular, plural, it was, but in the end, they couldn't say for sure, because it wouldn't be fair to punish everyone over the actions of 1 or 2 or 3. Nothing was ever done. Eventually, 2 of them were hired on as lawyers after they passed the bar, and 1 recently made partner. If anyone knows who it really was, the rumor mill is still totally silent. Story 21. This girl got wasted, accidentally flashed, knocked over a table of drinks, then proceeds to make out outside against the window of the bar where everyone could see with a fellow coworker. She was kind of new, still works there. 20 years later, that guy is married to her best friend now. They all work there. Story 22. My boss, chef at a new restaurant, and the rest of the management team went to a banquet where awards were given. Best new restaurant was what we're hoping for. The employee holiday party also happened after we closed a couple hours early. My chef had just broken up with his girlfriend and was already a pretty heavy drinker, but pregame and was wasted by the time they met at work to go to the banquet. When they arrived, he continued to hit the bar and was so drunk he could hardly walk straight. He proceeded to tell every woman at the table, there were 6 women seated, all with husbands, boyfriends, what he would do to them later, and why he would be the best they'd ever had. He was extremely explicit. Only one couple got up and left, and there wasn't a major scene because they were in the middle of the room. This is while they were waiting for their award, which came near the end. After the award was announced, we didn't get it, they left immediately. The woman driving the car he came in, another sous chef, brought him back to the restaurant for some reason. We were winding down for the night, but the dining room was still almost full. He walked in the front door and towards the kitchen, straight through the dining room. He grabbed a lobster off a woman's plate, ripped off the tail, plopped the rest on her table, and proceeded to eat it as he stumbled through to the kitchen. At one point, he tried grabbing a drink off another table, but the guy swatted him away. He made it to the kitchen and yelled at the guy who cooked the lobster that it was under-seasoned. He passed out in his office, and everyone figured he'd be out all night. But he woke up when the party got loud and came out for round 2. He was finally knocked unconscious when he grabbed a server's ass and tried undressing her. The boyfriend hit him pretty hard, and he threw up on the buffet, then passed out again as he was crawling under the table. In typical restaurant employee fashion, the party continued. He was under the table for 2 hours. Another manager checked to make sure he wasn't dead, and they just left him there. This was back before cell phone cameras were a thing, or it would have gone viral for certain. Best part? This was on a Saturday and Sunday was his day off. On Monday morning, he strolled in like nothing happened and started work like nothing had happened. He had a complete blackout and had no recollection of anything had happened. He actually came up to me and said, "Wow, must have been a hell of a party. I don't remember a thing." I told him the GM wanted to see him and he went downstairs to his office where he was promptly fired. Story 23, University Department Christmas Party. A tenured male, 83-year-old professor got tipsy and sat in a 19-year-old female intern's lap. After everyone saw him safely swept away in a cab, the grad students set up an impromptu croquet game in the hallway with beer bottles. It was the Slavic department. I played an accordion song that night. It was a time. Story 24, wasn't my work. I was up in Seattle doing some work on a Friday to Monday gig, set some crap up Friday, come back Monday, and make sure everything works, then fly home. And a friend of mine was living up there. So on the weekend, we would go out to various bars. On Saturday night, it was me, her, and her roommate. And we wanted to hit up this place called Tap House Grill. But as we walked in, it appeared to be closed for a private event. There was a table with some badges, but it was unmanned. Some kind of Christmas party, apparently, and we were a little late. So we grabbed some unmarked badges, wrote our first names on them, and walked down the stairs. Found out that it was a totally open bar, and there were appetizers and everything. Turned out it was a Microsoft party. Good news, I happen to be an 8 engineer, specializing in Microsoft software, certified and everything. So I ordered a Ciroc Martini. And when people started talking to us, I just told them I was from the LA office. Talk the talk, we were there for several hours and no one suspected a thing. I told the girls to just say they were in accounting or HR or something. Even had one Indian fellow take our picture. He wanted one with the girls and gave me his internal messaging address to send it to him. Poor Git never got that pic. We absolutely destroyed those nerds on the pool table. Awesome night. Didn't spend a dime except for the $20 I gave the bartender. Story 25. Company I used to work for rented out the Queen Mary in Long Beach for a Xmas party. 2 drunk guys jumped off one of the higher decks. The general manager staff were not happy. Story 26. Big Canadian investment bank in the late 90s. One of the traders called one of the mailroom guys a gay slur, which resulted in a massive brawl. The mailroom crew absolutely smoked the traders. It was glorious. Random stories from different years. Girls making out with other girls. Colleagues having to get cabs super early after getting too stoned on weed brownies. Adultery all over the ducking place. Story 27. This is pretty mild. One year, a local hotel had several company Christmas parties going on the same night. All of them with signs, so you knew which room your company was using. We had the room at the end of one hall, and smokers had to go past several parties to go out and have a cigarette. One thing you need to understand, at the time most people at work knew him as a no-nonsense kind of guy, who didn't really joke around much. He was friendly, but pretty much kept to himself. My boyfriend had gotten fairly drunk, but so were a lot of people, and some of us were DDDs for those who wanted to drink. Toward the end of the night, when the parties were starting to wind down, he excused himself to go smoke. He was gone quite a while, and I started to get concerned, thinking maybe he had fallen or passed out. I went looking for him. He wasn't anywhere outside. On the way back, I passed by one room that was having a luau-themed party, complete with Lees. That's when I spotted him. He was stumbling out of that party, festooned with several of those cheap plastic ones, being cheered on by several members of that party in equal states of tipsy. I went up to him. His new buddies said, "Oh, this is the wonderful woman. She needs to be decorated." So I ended up also sporting some new neckwear. We get back to our party. He walks in proud as a peacock and announces loudly to the room at large, "I just got laid." Everyone just lost it. Story 28. I lived out of the country at the time and decided to surprise my parents by coming home. I get to the house and they aren't there, so I call. They say they are at a company Christmas party and tell me they are at, locally, famous restaurant. I show up and a woman recognizes me as I'm trying to talk myself in. I surprise my parents and it's a fun time for all. I find the lady that got me in and thank her. We start chatting and honestly kind of hit it off. She mentions that she was promoted recently and just calls it a step up in management when I ask what she was doing there. Well, anyway, she starts talking about how she really needs to de-stress, but dating is tough at her age. She misses being wild and carefree. I take the hint and say we should bounce. We never made it out of the parking lot. I did not know when the party ended, but it turns out it was around the time her and I were getting out of the back seat of my car. She was the new CFO and I was the much younger son of the HR director. He'd been there 20 plus years. Everyone knew who I was. Oops. Story 29. We all stood around talking about work and our families for a few hours. Engineers are pretty boring people, apparently. One year, a random guy off the street showed up and started helping himself to food, and my boss had to ask him to leave. That's about the wildest thing I could think of. Story 30. Drunk coworker. Older guy. Steps backwards to get out of the way of dude carrying a tray of drinks. Trips over a table leg, crashes backwards into one of those crappy 80s cubicle movable walls, and the entire 12 or 14 string of wall all comes crashing down with a massive bang. Tables go over, punch bowl hits the floor, glass breaking, dust in the air, food all over the floor, everything stops. And that's when we all saw that our 60-plus-year-old boss had a 21-year-old intern bent over a desk behind the wall, railing her for all he was worth. Everybody freezes for a beat, then the boss starts grabbing at his ankles, trying to get his britches up. The next thing we hear was the old guy who took the wall out. I'm all right. Hell, we'd all forgotten about him. Best Christmas party ever. I miss the 80s. Story 31. Our company rented out a movie theater and had it show Home Alone. They made the concessions free and brought in a fully stocked bar. One employee took way too much advantage of the open bar, and while sitting in the movie theater, one row in front of the CEO and other execs, started loudly talking about who he wanted to have sex with at the company and the dirty things he'd do to these women. The VP of sales, a married woman, pulled him outside and told him to go home. He tried to kiss her. She pushed him away and said, "Go home again," and started to walk away. That's when she saw him peeing. Once he was done, he went into our office, which was only half a block away, to grab a snack from the office kitchen. What he did instead was go to the office, go to the bathroom, see another employee who happens to be gay, and grabs his ass and tries to kiss him. The other employee pushed him off, ran out, and that was the last anyone ever saw or heard from him. He didn't come into the office the next day, a Friday, and word around the office was he was fired via phone call and banned from the premises. Story 32. I worked for a private company hired by the government to work with the unemployed. Our main base of operations was the nearest welfare office. As we got along well with the regular staff, we were invited to the Christmas party, which takes place in the break room. I had some Dutch courage and wanted to go snooping around and see what the public area is like after hours, in the dark. So there I am, being all sneaky, like a ninja. I quietly make my way onto the floor I usually work on, and immediately I'm greeted by the familiar sound of someone having very passionate sex. I peek around the corner and there's the office Karen, being spit roasted over her desk by two guys. I watched for way longer than I probably should have. I made my exit when she hadn't. A while later, the three of them rejoined the party. Seeing her in a totally different light, I decided I was going to chat her up and it was going very well. But when she made it clear we could sneak off for some fun, I had the intrusive thought they might not have used condoms. So I declined, but kept chatting and flirting with her. She was lovely company. Nothing like how she is normally the following Monday at work. I tried chatting with her again, but she was back to being mega B, so I cut my losses and avoided her after that. Story 33. When I was in my young 20s, I worked for a company that I still am at 15 years later. This company was known for their fun parties with open bars and dancing. A lot of my close coworkers were around my age, but the other half were in their 50s, 60s and their spouses. Our party was out of town, so our company booked us a bus. To our joyful surprise, it was a party bus equipped with stripper poles and loud music. We were a rowdy bunch on our own, so this pole only egged us on in our drunken state. We had already pre-drank quite a bit before getting on the bus, and we were all bumping and grinding all over each other. Maybe a little too much, as some of the wives forbid this husband to get back on the bus for the way home and got rides with anyone who had room for them. We get absolutely trashed at the party and dance all night, and then we get back on the bus. A little less people than on the way there. One of my favorite coworkers had given her notice, and this was her last work function. So she decides, damn it, I'm gonna take my clothes off. And then more girls take their clothes off. The guys are taking their shirts off. There was probably a group of like 10 of us on this bus that are half naked dancing around. I still work at this company, and the old guys I work with still bring it up to this day. And they never booked a party bus again after that. Story 34, shopping mall Christmas party. They held it at the beginning of December, so people could blow off steam before the big rush. Center management, selected facilities staff, store owners, and shop staff. It was a big deal. 300-odd people wearing formal gear in a large convention room with free beer and wine. One of the security guys bought in a handful of beer bongs designed for slamming wine bottles and left them on certain tables. Pills were also passed around. He and a few others retired to the smoking balcony to enjoy some cigars. Perhaps due to alcohol, maybe a certain incident in the Oval Office led to thoughts. So many of the ladies present decided they wanted to try a taste of the various cigars with a lot, showing unique smoking techniques. A couple of the ladies decided to have a competition to decide who was better at performing. Some of the festivities moved inside, with the dance floor becoming the epicenter of debauchery with nudity and hooking up. A lot of the older and senior guests packed up and left very quickly. Things went a bit more mental as people were slamming the bottles of wine between dances. Eventually, the venue moved everyone out, which spread the fun across a few other venues. A few people arrested, some hospitalized from fights or inebriation, and a couple of tense relationship issues finished the night off nicely. The instigator arrived at work the next day with no hangover and laughing about the crap storm he created. As for the rest of us, the venue banned the mall from having any more functions there, which was not a problem because Christmas parties were banned by the parent organization from then on. Story 35. I was a bouncer off and on for about 20 years. I worked in a military town and was oftentimes fighting 3 or 4 times a night. I'm a doorman of experience. I've had numerous conversations where normal people could not believe the amount of aggro we would get on a single night. That being said, the worst single night of my life was when I did an old mate a favor and worked a corporate Christmas party for him as he was short-staffed. It was a 4-hour running battle where there were about 10 police cars and vans turned up. The old Bill ran out of handcuffs, and I cannot stress this enough. It was all because about 20 Absolute S from PC World got coked up and kicked off with a load of builders and scaffolders on their Xmas party who were all spread out through the venue. I think the first fight was about 8 p.m. In the end, the coppers just pepper sprayed anything that wouldn't lie down. Story 36. Me. I was the wildest thing to happen at a Xmas party. I was 20 female and worked for a big warranty company. Had only been there for 4 months, and we all got flown to another state for our Xmas party. Fancy city, fancy hotel, etc. Anyway, when I was getting ready to go downstairs to mingle, I put my dress on and it had a tear. So off I went down the street to buy something else to wear for the night. Came back, we partied to the wee hours, and when I woke up in the morning, I was in the 43YR old reps room that I had only met a handful of times, naked. I had lost my hotel keys, so had to do the walk of shame to the front desk with just a robe on to get a new one. As I walked down there, I walked past the breakfast room where all the executives are having breakfast. I then had to fly 2 hours back home with all these people with absolute shame and a nasty hangover. It gets worse. Not only were my bosses unhappy that I slept with a much older coworker, but they were convinced that when I walked down the street to buy a new dress, I was actually going down there to buy substances. Safe to say I quit not long after that. Story 37. I once had the pleasure of watching the drunk CEO of a major company that you've probably heard of throw another man, who was crashing their corporate Christmas party, into a door frame and knock him unconscious. I was with 2 police officers at the time who had actually previously warned said party crasher against being a nuisance earlier in the night. The 3 of us didn't see anything at all. We did, however, haul off the nuisance away from the party. Years later, I was in another job and I had to go warranty some flowers that had died. I rang the doorbell on the house to let the homeowner know I had the flowers, and the CEO opened the door. I froze for a second and went, "Hey, I know you. I saw you knock a dude out at your corporate Christmas party in 2010. And he just started laughing his ass off and went, "I don't remember that, but that sounds like me. Pleasant dude. Tipped me $100 for the hibiscus." Story 38. When I was articling at a smallish law firm, the Christmas party was pretty good. Nothing too wild. Just 2 of the associates, both married to other people, who everyone knew had a thing for each other, hooking up in a bathroom. After the party, though, some of us decided to go to a nightclub. One of the firm's 2 partners dropped her purse in front of the nightclub bouncer, though, and when she was unable to puck it up, we were all denied entry. Incidentally, that partner ended up having a child with the other partner some years later, and the other partner's subsequent divorce proceeding went to the Supreme Court of our country. Story 39. Some guy got hammered at our Dave & Buster's Christmas party and basically got the cops' attention because he was a bit too enthusiastic, using the mallet on that strength thing where you smash it and try to get it to hit the bell on top, like nearly yelling as he smashed it. So when he tried to leave, the cops said that they'd arrest him because he's obviously hammered. He said bullcrap and made the cops call in a breathalyzer on the spot, which they did. He was pretty over the limit, and the cops said he had to wait like 4 hours to drive home. It was like 9 p.m., and this was a decade before Uber existed. So he just sat at the bar and drank water, then went home with this middle-aged man and his 25-year-old girlfriend to play poker with his friends. They dropped him off like 2 a.m. and he went home, called off the next day. Oh, it was me, BTW, Story 40. I was a wedding/event DJ during my senior year of high school. Was assigned to work a corporate party for a sporting goods company everyone would recognize the name of. This was for their corporate headquarters, so all their highest-ranking execs were there. One of their SVPs got super drunk and requested the song Mustang Sally. This was during the CD era, so I told her no. I literally did not have that song in my collection that evening. She somehow took my polite, "I'm sorry, I don't have it with me. Is there anything you'd like to hear?" as a personal, "duck you and your taste in music." She came around into the DJ booth, full-on spit in my face, tried to slap me but stumbled and almost knocked over my equipment. I completely out of my depth. The CEO of the company was notified about what happened and came over to talk to me. He took me for a walk outside to cool down, and I realized years later as an adult, convinced me not to call the cops or tell my boss. I was tipped $20 at the end of the night by a multi-million-dollar company whose employee assaulted me. It's been 30 years and I still won't buy their products. Story 41. I worked at a fashion company at the time, and a homeless person snuck into a big company party at a posh hotel. Almost everyone who worked there was young, so it was actually fun like that. I put my purse on the table I was sitting at, and me and my work friends went to dance. My purse got stolen. The CEO of the company was an interesting guy and apparently bored with the party, because when I mentioned that my purse was gone, he went on a personal mission to find it. El Mayo that I did not ask for BTW. I was just crying. Well, Monday comes around and my purse is on my boss's desk in her office. This man walks in and starts regaling this vigilante hero story where he was riding along with the cops as they tracked my phone and was with them when they busted in to get my purse from some trap house in a bad neighborhood of the city. I was amazingly grateful because it was vintage and my mom's from when she was a teen. But I still think about his retelling of the story and wonder what actually happened. Story 42. 35 years ago, Enterprise rental car Christmas party had ended and weaved upstairs to a suite. 2 people locked in the bathroom of the executive suite after party, loudly banging, not with the people they came with. Rude as hell once the door got unlocked. Got fired on the spot. Enterprise threw some crazy parties. Story 43. The owners of the fitness clubs I worked for took the directors out for a fancy night. Limo took us to dinner and drinks. Then to scores. The one owner had an escort kneel on all fours naked on a table in the middle of all of us. It was very strange, at Story 44. I missed this part of the party as I had already left. The female office manager got so drunk she threw up on the carpet at the event location, and the boss's wife wound up scrubbing the carpet. Office manager worked for another 6 months before getting fired for a different reason. Story 45. Holiday party in like 2018 in a major US city. Not just coworkers and their dates, but also clients. I worked for a big digital marketing company, and we would get after it at any opportunity. Had a female coworker who was very outgoing, and the alcohol put her over the top. I don't remember the lead-up or why she thought it would be funny, entertaining, but she whipped out her pussy in front of coworkers and clients. I feel like she thought it was going to be funny, like flashing a boob in front of friends. She got let go the next week. The thing that really surprises me is that she seems to be doing extremely well, and I'm the one who blew my life up from alcohol and had to get sober. Story 46. One of the VPS and almost getting into a fight with the DJ. Apparently this wasn't his first holiday party drunken episode. The company is blacklisted from a few venues because of his drunken antics, the worst being kicking down a bathroom door. Story 47. My boss, normally very formal woman in her 60s, brought a date to the Xmas party, and they both proceeded to get pretty drunk. Partway through our very nice formal dinner, Santa arrived to give out our Christmas bonus envelopes and read a speech our boss had written about how proud she was of our accomplishments. It was so nice. But during the distraction, my boss got under the table and started to do BJ. Santa noticed and started calling her an escort, which drew the attention of the entire table. Turns out Santa was her husband, doing her a favor after the paid actor she hired failed to turn up and her date was her best friend, whom her husband believed was gay. I couldn't deal with the awkwardness around the office and I wound up quitting on January 3rd. Story 48. Drunk 20-something admin. Like stumbling drunk. Creepy 30-something engineer tried to take advantage. Thankfully, others noticed and kept her out of trouble. Creepy guy was fired the next week. Story 49. I worked for years for a very big international travel agency that was known for its boozing. One Xmas party, we got flown to this exclusive high-rise in Thailand, and the guys got so drunk, they had a mini bar fridge throwing competition. They went to each of their rooms, ripped the mini bar out, and then measured how far into the pool they could throw them. When no clear winner was found, they did it with the occasional chairs until the staff finally called the police. The company had to pay for all new mini bars and some broken sliding doors on the patio and the chairs, and to have the pool properly cleaned. You'd think that this would result in a lot of firings, but these managers just got legendary status at the company. It was that kind of place. I once got written up for not drinking 3 cocksucking cowboys in a row because I was driving. I was told I was not a team player as I had won 3 awards and should be showing my staff how to celebrate. Story 50. I used to work at a car dealership. I knew the layout of the entire dealership, so I knew the owner's office had the nicest bathroom. I had to pee and didn't want to use the public bathrooms, so I went to use the owner's private bathroom. Walking past the conference room outside his office, I saw the owner, the head of sales, and the general manager gangbanging the female head of finance. Story 51. I worked as a can in elder care facilities for about 4 years. One of the owners of a place I worked at decided that it was a good idea to use a function room in the nursing home to host the holiday party instead of renting a venue. This was for off-duty staff only. I don't know about the legalities of the situation, but there was a lot of alcohol available for the partygoers. The owner stopped in around 8 p.m. to say hello, and then went upstairs to his office to do paperwork. Everyone proceeded to get drunk. One of my coworkers grabbed an unused adult diaper, fastened it on over her jeans, went to the boss's office and sprawled belly down across his desk and said, "Spank me, daddy." Never had an in-house party again. Story 52. Christmas party was at the house of the second in command of the whole small company. Gator ate one of her chickens while we were out there, came right up out of the pond and nymph, feathers everywhere. She went inside and got her gun and was hell-bent on shooting it, but it was nighttime, so it disappeared into the pond and nobody could find it even with floodlights and searchlights and four-wheelers. Ducker had been eating her chickens for a while. She only had 2 left after this one got 8. 1 single rooster and 1 single hen left, after starting off with a dozen total. So she was mad. The caliber of handgun she had wouldn't have got the job done anyways, and she didn't know you have to get it in the back of the head in a very specific spot to actually hit it. Anything less, and it's just too armored to work, and is only going to either scare it or piss it off. Story 53. I worked for a large daycare company in a popular Texas city. They had a huge dinner and holiday party at a hotel, free drinks, a DJ and dancing, a huge roast beef for some reason. It was a daycare, so the employee attendees were probably 95% female. Leadership gets on stage and says they're going to have a drawing. They draw names and hand out gift certificates, then high-dollar prizes culminating in an all-expenses-paid trip to an exotic location, I think Hawaii. The crowd is already thoroughly crap-faced. Every ducking prize went to upper management. At the end, you could not hear who was getting what between the announcements of names because there were hundreds of women either booing or screaming things like, "You suck." It was so disturbing, but glorious at the same time. My date and I ducked out when they called the Hawaii trip because things were getting so out of hand. Story 54. My boss, who was a very successful guy in his late 40s, goes so hammered, he asked me to get him an 8-ball. After the party was over, he gathered a few female associates and myself, and we went to his office at work, did a crap ton of substances with a few of the girls, and then he took us out on his company card, paid for VIP, and I could only imagine what the tab was. We raked up at the nicer club in town. That same night, he slept with a chick who worked in customer service. He got canned the following Monday, and the girl he hooked up with. They're married now. 3-4 kids and successful real estate people in our town. One of the craziest nights of my life, and I just went along with it. I thought for sure I'd get fired. Stayed working there for 5 more years before finding a different job. Story 55. Girls from operating room got so drunk they started fighting under the portico of the fancy venue. Ended up in the holly bushes and were scratched up, bleeding, dresses torn, extensions hanging like tinsel. It was epic. This was before cell phones, so no pictures though. I was the new kid, and I can remember thinking, I'm not sure if I can work here. Story 56. Electronics manufacturer company Christmas party. Was in an old manor home, converted for events, open bar, food with a live jazz band, DJ and a dance floor. The company, 300 people, hired lots of young, attractive immigrant girls that worked the assembly line, mostly from India and the Philippines, so they worked cheaper than a domestic worker. After the party got started, The girls rapidly became drunk, dancing and staggering about in evening gowns. The lead singer in the band was keeping busy cruising around, picking up a different girl on the breaks between each set and having loud sex with each behind the stage curtain. Finally, the DJ got fed up, drawing the curtain back, exposing the lead singer and one of our Indian girls in a very compromised position. Immediately, the band left in a hurry. Without missing a beat, the DJ took over, finishing the night. Our assembler that got caught was so embarrassed, she switched departments to a different building within a week. Story 57. I work at a church in a small town. We also run a preschool program out of said church. For our Christmas party last year, the teachers had a twerking contest. My boss saved Kleenex boxes and put ping pong balls inside of them. The Kleenex boxes were then strapped around teachers' waists, with the Kleenex box resting right above your ass crack. The first teacher to twerk out all of their ping pong balls outside of the Kleenex opening won. It was amazing. None of the parents know that all of the teachers are closeted hood rats. Story 58. We entertained a group of secretaries for Christmas lunch, all women who worked for customers of ours. My boss dressed as Santa and also gave out gifts to the guests. After too much alcohol, the boss started dancing on the table. He stripped down naked save for his gumboots. Not sure how successful our lunch was, as some seemed to enjoy and others were horrified. Story 59. I was working for Chipotle in like 2012 and we were transitioning from one GM to another and the new one really didn't like the old one. They were just very different personalities. And at one point towards the end of the party, which was at Sky Zone and MOA, the old GM jumped on the back of the new GM, who I knew was not a fan of being touched, and he responded by turning and slamming himself backwards into a wall and put the old GM right through it. And a security guard saw the whole thing, so my whole team got to stand and watch as both of our most senior managers had to give them all their info so they could pay for the damages. Pretty good Christmas party, I would say. Story 60. Big law firm party. Open bar, top shelf food, etc. My dept and several others, support staff, had a great time hanging out, dancing, etc. Half the staff was pretty hammered. One of the younger and well-liked kids from the mailroom umbered home but forgot his keys at the office. So he climbed up the front of the townhouse he lived in to get inside. A neighbor saw it and called the police, thinking he was a burglar. Cops showed up, kicked in the door, and he had a gun and told them to get the F out of his house. They hid him in his bed. I'll never forget so many folks crying throughout the following Monday as word spread about what happened. So sad. Story 61. Someone's partner got fingered by somebody else in the back of the taxi. Then one of the managers slept with the same girl in the house they were all drinking at. The boyfriend found out, angrily chucked her out. So this girl then slept with the boyfriend's best friend, who had kindly offered her his bed for the night. So she had somewhere to sleep. It didn't take her long to persuade him to keep her warm, so he said. I witnessed none of this. Heard all about it the next day in the office. Bunch of snakes. Story 62. Someone threw up all over the men's bathroom of the restaurant that was rented out for us. Unlimited open bar. Because of the vomit all over that one, everyone used the women. Until that one also became covered in vomit from the CEO's wife. Tick was snorted off the counters. Story 63. Party was at the office, but the big boss was not there. A photo of my wife and another woman laughing and dancing on his big tooled leather desktop reached the big boss a few days later. A few days after that, my wife and the other dancing woman got a copy of an invoice for a huge amount, marked, "Please remit 50%, to replace the leather of the desktop, but also to reupholster the desk chair because of course it had to match, like $3,000 total. And in 1980, the immediate boss stood up to the big boss, and in fact the leather never did get replaced. Nasty document to get from your employer at Christmas, though. Story 64 had an assistant get so drunk that her boss had to help carry her up the stairs. She was put in a cab with a garbage bag and the cab driver was given an extra $50 in case she threw up. This was the early 2000s and Uber wasn't a thing. Story 65. Our boss bought an iPod for a present exchange and chaos ensued because the limit was 20. Everyone wanted the iPod. Plenty of arguments happened. Cherry on top was my boss was gifted an oven mitt knitted by a coworker which he desperately tried to exchange cue to him having a meltdown. Story 66. I have been at my current job for 9 years. I got hired in January of that year and I heard stories that at the previous month's Christmas party, 2 of my new co-workers, both married women, got super drunk and started fooling around in a bathroom. They got caught by our still current operations manager, who is also married. He was also super drunk and instead of exiting the area, he joined them. Story 67. Party hosted at CEO's house. Someone throws up by the pool. CEO comments, "Wish I had a dog, it would just eat it for me." People laugh. Then a sales guy drunkenly says, "I'll eat it for 1,000. CEO pulls out his checkbook, writes a check, hands the sales guy a check for 1K and a spoon. Sales guy hesitates, then kneels down to scoop up a spoonful of vomit, eating it while his pregnant wife shakes her head and covers her face. Guy got fired like 2 weeks later, not sure if related to the vomit incident or some other idiocy. Story 68. Fist fight in the parking lot over the shop bicycle. I'm not referring to an actual bicycle. Some cute-ish girl that basically everybody got a ride. 3 guys sobered up at the airport. They had a drunken plan to go hit up Vegas that exact night. A few more events, but those were the most notable. The usual drunkenness and puking, calling the boss derogatory names. The next year was a dry Christmas party. They brought in a born-again Christian who was a recovering addict. When she went up front to give her speech, upper management went to the back and closed off the exits to force everyone to listen. Story 69. A corporation that you've definitely heard of that I worked at for a while used to take over a Marriott in their area every holiday season and have a banger of a party. Booked all of the rooms and people used to get whacked. I remember some SVP or something giving a boring speech in the main ballroom, so a few of my friends and I snuck out piecemeal and stumbled into one of the bars down a hall where a lot of people we worked with were already crap-faced and all over each other. Looked like a scene out of Caligula. Some really unexpected people in there too. This was at 11 a.m. That place could party. Story 70, same party. One guy projectile vomiting over the director. Other guy took a bunch of Met, and you could see him struggling to keep a straight face. Luckily, management are completely oblivious to what substances used looks like. Both guys are still working there. Story 71. About 20 years ago, I worked at a small company in the UK that made the software used by all companies in a lucrative but niche worldwide market. Very large amounts of money from a few major clients. We all went to the pub before closing for the Christmas break. Everyone pretty drunk. The founder left his phone unattended and someone thought it would be hilarious to prank call the CEOs of these major clients. By prank call, I mean call them up at unsocial hours, different time zones, and yell and swear at them. Of course, he was fired when this unwound over the next 24 hours. Story 72. Open bar served to 150 plus people. Company staff airs younger, early 20s, early 30s, given field. Shots weren't supposed to be served, but somebody figured out early on that tipping well drove at least one member of the bartending staff to bend the rules. 2 hours in and the dance floor is crazy. Senior team members are barely standing. Company president tries to make a speech, but the crowd can't be contained. Nobody stops talking. President retreats to the bathroom in tears. Company holiday party is fully canceled for the next 2 years. Story 73. Worked at a stiff upper lip company, and a colleague who was a former stripper got hammered and broke out with some of her old moves and tried to pole dance using a square pole. Ambulance was called, and she had to have a knee replacement. Story 74. Head chef was hooking up with sommelier. I worked in a different department, so I didn't know, but apparently it wasn't much of a secret to the kitchen staff. I was giving a tour of the back of house to some of the owners, CEOs of the resort group, and we walked in on them having sex in the wine cellar. Kitchen staff could have warned me, but didn't. Ice cold. Both were married and both of their spouses were at the event. Story 75. The wives of 2 coworkers got into a drunken fist fight, more like a sloppy slap grab fight, over literally nothing in the parking lot. The 2 equally drunk husbands got involved. One husband knocked the other husband out, flat on his back, instantly snoring. These guys worked together every day. It was nuts. The guy that got knocked out ended up with a broken eye socket and a head injury from falling on the concrete. He still can't smell anything. Hopefully this year's party, which is tonight, has less of this nonsense. Story 76. We had a dude got rather crap-faced. As always, he went up behind one of the ladies sitting chatting with another one. He then pulled hose banana out and rolled it down the shoulder of the one in front of him. The angle prevented the victim of actually seeing it herself, but it was rather quickly reported by the girl across the table. The guy resigned a few days later and started delivering packages. He was back about half a year later. I just heard rumors about what had happened, so I just asked the girls, and they confirmed everything, so that was rather ducked up. Story 77. Years ago, I was sitting next to my then wife. A woman at the office had the hots for me. She was sitting on the other side. She kept running her hand up my leg. Next thing I knew, the owners of the B&B we hired were swingers. They invited the entire party for extras. It turned into what you think it turned into. I escaped with stolen shirt and my dignity intact. Story 78. Not wild per se, but really funny. We had a bring a bottle of wine to share party and opened them up and played games. One guy brought a bottle of scotch that was in a bottle that resembled the wine bottles. Another guy poured himself a full glass of it. Lights were dimmed and he didn't read the label. My husband noticed and nudged me while the guy was pouring. So, of course we watch. He takes a sip and nearly chokes, but he apparently didn't see a way, so he proceeded to quietly get rip-roaring drunk. It was really funny. Story 79. At one Xmas party, I got horrendously drunk at the free bar. got into a fight with two people I worked with, squared up to my boss. I was literally thrown out of the pub and subsequently arrested trying to headbutt the police who tried to calm me down. I sobered up very quickly in the back of the police van and spent the night in jail. A very valuable lesson learned. It must have been a wild sight for anyone watching. Side note, I celebrated 2 years of being sober this year. Story 80. My husband went to a work party and the after party was in a famous club downtown. He and his friend decided to try to get into the VIP and they did, only to find a room full of men watching two women with dildos going at it. He said he just slowly backed out, Homer Simpson style, so no one saw him witness anything. Story 81. In the golf resort where the Ryder Cup was once held, we were the first company to have a function in the newly built golf resort. Apparently, the contractor not screwing down the 8-inch piece of granite above the urinals was enough for an old guy I worked with to see that as a free invitation to remove the piece of granite and walk out with it like a surfboard under his arm. It took a few of us to explain, because it wasn't bolted down, that doesn't mean it's free. Story 82. Knockdown, drag-out fight between two technicians after it was discovered that one guy had slept with the other guy's wife during the party. Wife ended up pregnant and her husband raised the kid as his own. Story 83. Not at my job, but my dad's at a dealership had 2 incidents. Incident 1, a guy put his junk on another guy's shoulder to be funny. Incident 2, a guy got an exception from his probation to go to the out-of-state overnight Christmas party. And while he was drunk, someone at the hotel had ordered a pizza, and he claimed it was his and stole it. He then got arrested for stealing said pizza and thrown in jail. Story 84. A couple of them, subsequent years at a restaurant, sang a song I Ducking Hate You, inserted one of the owner's name. Multiple people taking turns pissing in the kitchen sink, like it became a urinal for the night. Everyone hitting on everyone. Everyone hitting on everyone's plus one. Multiple people having sex in the bathrooms. Multiple people plowing a book's wife in the bathroom. Pies thrown. Owners were brothers and they got into a fist fight. One of them crap himself. Probably more. But I was drunk at all of them. Story 85. Myself. I remember flicking an ecstasy tablet in the air and catching it in my mouth in front of everyone. I've no idea why I thought my boss would be impressed by that. Story 86. Not that crazy, but there was a drunk guy, probably in his mid-20s, that went up to one of the senior guys whose daughter was working part-time and said, "You gotta hook me up with your daughter." I was eagerly awaiting a fight, but you could tell it took everything in the father's body to not duck him up. He didn't even look at the drunk guy. He just said in a quiet but firm voice, "If you don't leave right now, I will ducking lost you." Story 87. Oh boy, it was pretty wild. We all got a +1. We had an audit that week, and the old lady auditor failed us. When she left, my manager said to me, "Thank that Karen is gone." So I decided to invite her as my +1 to the Christmas party, and she agreed. The look on my manager's face when I brought her. My manager's wife was drunk twerking on the pool table, and he was drunk too, and tried to fight me. Story 88. My first job was for a mattress company. At our regional Christmas party, a rowdy group of hooligans showed up from a rival mattress company. Words were exchanged, and while I was trying to defuse the situation, I was sucker punched by some guy from our competition. I beat 2 mattress salespeople up over a rivalry, and not only did I not get fired, I was congratulated by my boss's boss. He made a joke about knocking out the competition. Story 89. A 25-year-old girl started aggressively making out with her boyfriend, who was a bit older than her, and looked older than he actually was. Someone from another office location said, "Why is that chick making out with her dad?" She started crying. Loud words were said. Someone pushed someone else, and a number of staff from each branch began fist fighting in a museum lobby. The Christmas party next year was just an in-office spaghetti lunch. Story 90. My boss's wife got harassed by a coworker at a club while my boss was crying in the back. He was soon divorced and rid of the secretary. Coworker skated. What's the worst thing you've seen happen at a party? Story 1. A party when I was in high school. We were all drunk, but at some point I noticed that some people were replacing water with vodka for all animal in the house. Few birds, dog, and a hamster. I told the guy who was holding the party. He did nothing, just laughing. I removed the vodka and put water back myself. Seriously, duck those guys. Story 2. Somebody took a crap in the dryer and turned it on. It wasn't a very big party, probably 20 to 30 people, so everybody knew each other. But probably an hour into it getting going, the house started to be permeated with this nasty, stick-to-your-nostrils crap smell. People started talking about it. It was cold outside, but we still opened the doors and everybody started hunting around, trying to figure out what the smell was. It actually smelled worse outside. The homeowner thought that maybe one of his toilets and backed up, but bathrooms were all clean. After about 15 minutes of searching, somebody opened up the dryer and found it completely encrusted in dried, flaky crap. That's why the outside smelled. It was pumping the air from the dryer right out onto the back deck. The homeowner was pissed and pretty much ended the party. I don't blame him for that. But we never figured out who did it, and it was probably a good year before any of my friends had another house party. The aftermath almost looked like there was little dried leaves in it, but the dryer basket, or whatever you would call it, was pretty much entirely coated in a thin layer of dried flaky crap. The worst was when he pulled out the lint trap and it was just like dried poop dust. I think that's when he really realized that the dryer was trash and there was no saving it. Story 3. A buddy of mine passed out in front of the toilet at a house party of mine. A bunch of people had to use it, but he insisted that they just use the bathroom anyway, with him wrapped around the base, and they did. Eventually, a couple decided they wanted to duck in the bathroom, but he was still in there, wrapped around the base of the toilet, so they did it anyway. I finally realized he was in there, dragged him out of there, and put him in my bed for the night. And now, whenever he tells this story, I'm gay for some reason because I slept there too, facing the other direction, fully clothed. I love you, Timmy, but also, duck you. 1. No, we didn't sleep head to foot. I was pretty drunk too, and I didn't think of it. 2. When he tells this story, he's joking about me being gay, and he was in no way upset about the sleeping arrangements, just a decent way to bust my chops, I guess. 3. I forgot to mention the part where he was adamantly insisting that everybody use the bathroom while he was lying there. It definitely adds flavor. Pretty sure he was passed out when the couple decided on their coitus, though. He was completely passed out by the time I found him and moved him, so he didn't insist upon staying there, as opposed to sleeping in the bed. But I think the spacey joke was funny, in spite of the downvotes. Story 4. We had just finished a round of King's Cup, and there was a lull. The cup was full of beer, Smirnoff, margarita, and a bunch of other crap. We played with 2 decks. We didn't really finish, and it kind of just ended. I didn't want people to get bored, so I shouted, "Last one in the bathroom has to drink the King's Cup." There was a ducking stampede of about 20 people in my house. First person in broke the door handle and flew into the shower doors that buckled and busted into the bathtub. Second person, my sister, tried to stop and I slammed into her, causing person 1 to fling into the shower. My sister and I crashed down to the ground, and I saw why she had to stop. My female roommate was trying to take a crap. My sister laughed so hard she pissed herself while I was sitting on her lap. Oh, and about 8 more people piled in and landed on top of us. It was great. Story 5. A drunk guy threw his plastic cup into the pool when he finished his drink, and the guy whose party it was went off, turned off the stereo, got everyone's attention, and gave a mental lecture about not throwing anything into the pool. Within 4 minutes, everything was in the pool. Plates, glasses, furniture, books, etc. And worst of all, about 24 pot plants. Story 6. I saw a girl eating a sandwich in the corner of a party with a dog watching. The dog kept going in to take bites of the sandwich, and this led to the girl drunkenly moving it at the last second to make out with the dog. It happened for a good 5 minutes. I put down my drink and left right then. Story 7. Drunk dude did a front split to impress girls and ripping his jeans. Why was that the worst? Because it was me. Story 8. Friend tells me, "Hey, if you see me running, you should run too." That's awfully concerning. Why's that? People are coming that have beef with my friend here. They're strapped, apparently. Strapped as in have real guns? Yes. Okay, well then, why don't we leave right now? I couldn't get my 2 drunkest. I was deep, because one was talking to a girl and the other was nowhere to be found. Eventually, people start flooding outside to see a fist fight. Fight turns into guy pulling his piece out and firing into the direction of someone. 3 people get hit. This was in like super white people suburbia too. No one died, but photos circulated of the people who got hit and the wounds. Hand, leg, and leg. I saw the hand one from afar. Crap is crazy. Later found out it was over a girl and $50. Story 9. In high school, I saw a guy be encouraged to chug a whole big bottle of tequila. Later that night, I found him passed out on a mattress away from everyone else. I talked to him to get him to tell me he was okay. He stood up, did the robot, and fell back asleep. He left in an ambulance. Story 10. Child drowning. My apartment overlooks the pool area, and there was a birthday party for an 8-year-old just setting up. While the 4 or 5 adults were setting up the tables, the 10 or 12 kids all piled into the hot tub right next to them. One child ended up on the bottom right at everybody's feet but couldn't be seen. Eventually, one of the kids felt her down there and the screaming began. That's when I first looked outside and watched the rest of the tragedy unfold. Police, paramedics, and the little girl did not survive. Story 11. When I was around 10, my dad hosted a birthday party for one of his good friends whose boyfriend was proposing that night. The boyfriend even hired a mariachi band from out of town to play. Lots of people drinking and dancing. I don't remember why, but boyfriend pissed of the girlfriend shortly after proposing, and they went outside to argue. We hear screaming and everyone ran outside to see him. Who's drunk and ate the worm, driving away, and she's running after him. Next thing we know, we hear more yelling outside. Everyone runs outside again to see 2 of the mariachi band members fist fighting. Just the sight of seeing 2 mariachi band players in full costume fist fighting on my dad's front lawn will forever be engraved in my mind. Soon after, the mariachi players left, leaving one of the fighters. My dad offered to drive him where he needed, but he just left and we see him walking into the darkness. Story 12. In high school, I moved to a new school. A TA was showing me around the campus, and we sort of hit it off. She invited me to a party that weekend. It was pretty standard fare of underage drinking and crafty music. That is until the girl who invited me got super hammered. She was walking around the party, basically throwing herself at anyone and everyone. After she got upset, no one would take her upstairs. She walked to the middle of the room and called for attention. She immediately chugged the rest of her beer, dropped her pants, and stuck the beer bottle. There was like 20 people around her just aghast at what happened. Still remember it vividly after 12 years. Story 13. Watched my tough guy buddy try to pick a fight with a visiting tough guy from another town. My friend instantly caught a jumping Van Damme spin kick to his head, knocking him temporarily blind. Saw another friend get bit on the neck by a dude while trying to break up a fight. We had to take him to emergency for the bleeding tooth marks in his neck. Another friend was hit at a bush party. He was fine, but it was close, and the stabber caught a boot ducking, and his truck was parked on a fire pit. Another guy caught stitches trying to break a glass bottle over his own head. Two girls in a savage fight that left both of them missing teeth and bleeding profusely. It's all about balance in a small town. Story 14. Party host ended up beating a friend of mine for puking on his porch. Before the guy could finish asking for stuff to clean it up, the host went to his room, grabbed brass knuckles, and beat his face in. There was blood everywhere. I don't remember doing this, but I made our other friend give me his shirt and held it to his face, and we took him to the hospital. Later learned, host was doing substances in the back alone. Guy had to have facial reconstruction surgery. He has a very different face now. Story 15. Guy had a party at his grandma's apartment that faced a busy street. After a few too many, he decides to moon passing cars. Ass went through the glass. His friend caught him before he fell through. Party over, while Moon Man went to the hospital. Story 16. Story time. It's not like I saw it done, but it was probably the most horrible thing that happened at a party I was at. The party happened in a pretty small flat, so we are just starting, standing, and talking. All the usual things. First beers are being opened. And there's this one guy who afterwards nobody admitted to bring with them because of what happened. Guy's really fat, probably borderline obese. Laughs at every joke very loudly. That's what we all remembered about him. But whatever, that was not the problem. Now the fat guy drinks one beer, and at some point, he excuses himself to the bathroom. After that, he was seen leaving very quickly through the front door without saying anything to anyone. And then the next person who entered the bathroom had a nasty surprise waiting for them. A huge, very dense crap that just couldn't be flushed. Didn't matter how many times you tried. Really, the thing filled the bowl and made the whole bathroom smell horribly. We spent half the party talking about how to get rid of it. And after we were done, the smell continued until the next day. Story 17. Watched a guy play stupid games with a 5-pound can of black powder and a lighter and turn into a human fireball, then spend a week in the burn ward at Boston before dying. Story 18. There was a girl in the bathroom that had too much to drink. I heard her go silent, so I opened the door. I see a dude standing over her undoing his belt. I said, "What the duck are you doing?" He was saying something along the lines of, "Nah, man, it's cool." I threw him into the wall and then threw him outside the bathroom. He was then escorted by a few party members and thrown outside into the snow. I carried the girl into the nearest bed and made sure the house owners knew she was there. To this day, she has no idea what happened that night. I see her on social media still, and she seems to have a great life. I'm just glad that nothing happened to her. Story 19. Not me, but my cousin was at a Halloween school party years ago. Some local delinquents turn up and a girl gets slapped. Next thing you know, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Captain America, and the Pope are kicking the crap out of said delinquents. Story 20. Went to a friend's Christmas party when I was 10. My whole family was invited. Santa came and handed out presents to all of the kids there. My sister's friend got a beautiful amethyst necklace that her parents purposely broke the necklace within the first few minutes she had it. Story 21. A guy was drunk and ate a hot dog at a house party I was at. An hour goes by and the guy is nowhere to be found. 10 minutes of searching later, and a couple of my buddies found him dead on the back porch. He had choked to death on a hot dog just outside of a room full of people. We think he started choking and went outside to try and get some air and was too drunk to do anything about it. That night was no good. Story 22. This happened after a massive party at the house my best friend and I rented. After everyone left, it was me, my best friend Colin, and his girlfriend. Colin always passed out after a few drinks and went like totally unresponsive. Well, he was out at the dining room table, and his girlfriend asked me to get him to his bed. I'm a big guy, so it was no problem. I carried him to his bed. She proceeded to take his shoes off and get him out of his nice outfit, so I walked away. I heard her call for me and I returned. Colin was wearing very tight jeans and she couldn't get them off. She asked if I could help her get them off. I worked a lot during this time with adolescents diagnosed with autism, teaching life skills such as showering and using the bathroom, some with severe symptoms. So undressing a fully grown guy was pretty normal in my day. Without a second thought, I tackled the situation and began successfully removing my best friend and roommate's pants. At some point, without me realizing, his girlfriend walked out to go to the kitchen. I thought she was standing behind me. At this point, Colin wakes up and sees me pulling down his pants. The look in his eyes as he reached down and pulled his pants back up still haunts me. I quickly turned to his girlfriend to explain the situation, to find she is not in the room any longer, and I stumbled and stuttered and barely was able to mention her name. And she had asked for help before excusing myself and running to my room. I laid in bed all night staring at the ceiling and have never felt so awkward in my life. I had no idea what to expect the next day, but I assumed it would be, "Can I have your keys? I'll help you move your crap out." However, the next morning, he had very fuzzy memory of the whole thing and thought it was hilarious. We remained close friends, but even writing this makes me shudder. His eyes spoke volumes of betrayal, disgust, fear, all as he reached past my hands to pull up his pants. The crushing feeling of awkward misunderstanding that tormented me all night. It was, however, a great party, story 23, at a Cinco de Mayo party. There were about 22 work colleagues in a pretty small condo, maybe 1,200 square feet. Most of these people were friendly, but I was pretty new and immediate started drinking. While I was outside grilling meat on the balcony, my deaf coworker, who is Mexican, was preparing an authentic Cinco meal complete with freshly fried tortilla chips. Another employee just had to get into the galley kitchen and help, though the deaf friend, even though he had asked for space. I come inside to deliver some meat and grab another drink and hear the most horrendous scream one could hear. The deaf guy turns around and the other employee was right behind him. He dropped the head of lettuce he was holding, which in turn hit the handle of the pot with the frying vegetable oil, which then spilled down the other employee's legs, melting that person's leggings into the skin. The memory is still disgusting. Story 24. One dude was noticeable drunk very early, like 30 minutes into partying, and he was already gesticulating wildly with his hands and speaking loud af. We celebrated our friend's 20th birthday, and he got a vase from one dude. We immediately lit it up and gave it around so everyone got a hit. The special dude broke it before giving it to the last person. Poor Johnny got no hit. But that's not all. Special dude went to toilet, and after not coming back after 30 minutes, me and party host went to check if the toilet is more interesting than our party. Special dude wasn't there, but he left vomit and poop all over the sink, shower, toilet, and wall. He must have used his hands to smear it in all these spots. Most disgusting thing ever experienced. Story 25. Had a few drinks at my cousin's house. Cousin's girlfriend starts sitting on every guy's lap, which leads to one of them telling my cousin that his girlfriend is too flirtatious, and that ends up spiraling into an argument, which leads to the cousin's girlfriend jumping into the car, out the front drunk out of her mind, and trying to drive into my cousin and the other guy to stop them arguing. It was quite surreal watching it all play out, but the cops eventually showed up and no one managed to get seriously messed up except for a few bruises. But what a night that was. Story 26. Some guy got into an argument with his girlfriend and punched her in the face. I stepped in before he could hit her again and realized everyone was just walking away or inciting him to hit her or me. Good thing he was a Karen that was only tough when it came to beating women. I never associated with anyone at that party again. Story 27. Work party, and one of the workers got wasted, as in stumbling around and could barely talk straight. He thought it would then be a good idea to go up to his boss and tell her that she was an idiot and didn't know what she was doing. Funny part was, she thought it was funny, but the guy did not show up for work for a week. On to the it guys. Photos hoped his picture on the pic of a milk carton, printed a bunch out, and posted them around the office. It was awesome. He came back, apologized, kept his job for a bit longer, but ended up leaving. Story 28. Absolute terror on my friend's face as he tried to stop the bullets flying at him with his hands. I was a freshman in college and Thanksgiving break came up. I went back to Las Vegas, where I'm from, to hang out with friends and family. During the break, my friends and I decided we were going to have a party. One of the guys in the group was in charge of inviting other people because he swore he could get a bunch of girls to show up. His solution was to put the invite to this party on his public Twitter. For those uninformed, that is a terrible idea. Anyways, night goes on and the party is pretty banging. About 40-50 people in this house. I am pretty drunk, but not drunk enough to not notice this one group of all dudes ostracized from the rest of the party. They were just huddled in a corner, not interacting with anyone else. So I talked to the guy who owned the house we were in. He doesn't know who those guys are. So I asked some other friends. No one knows who those guys are. Nice. There's a group of AX random dudes just hanging out in the corner. So we go over, a group of 5 of us, and we ask if they know anyone here. They claim to know the guy throwing this party. Nick says, "That's weird. I'm the one throwing this party, and I've never seen you in my life. I think you guys need to leave." Boy, let me tell you, things went downhill from there. They tell us to go duck ourselves. We tell them that they can kindly do the same, and that if they don't leave, there will be problems indeed. They start grabbing bottles of alcohol and flipping tables, throwing crap off counters, etc. My buddies and I start shoving them out the door and grabbing crap back out of their hands. This turns into an all-out brawl in the cul-de-sac. These ducks are using the stolen bottles of alcohol as weapons too. Cheaters. Sucks for them though, because all of my friends and I were wrestlers in high school and some of us wrestled in college. They are getting their asses beat. That's when it happens. I'm lost in the fight when I hear about 4 to 5 loud pops. I knew what was happening immediately. Homeboy had just turned a gentlemanly fisticuffs into a very one-sided gunfight. That's when I drew my katana. No, I'm ducking kidding. I grabbed my friend who was pummeling a guy next to me and ran at approximately Mach 3 to a driveway and got behind a car. Once safe, I peeked over the hood to see what I could see. The guy shooting was firing straight up into the air. Most of my friends had scattered also and were nowhere to be seen, except one. What happened next felt like slow motion. I see my buddy John on the next driveway over scrambling around looking for something to hide behind. I look back at the guy shooting. He is aimed at John now. I looked back at John. He had turned around and was facing the shooter. It felt like time froze. John instinctively put his arms out, turned his head away and clenched up, like you do when you know something is about to hit you. He was ducked. The shooter was only 30 feet away and there wasn't even a blade of grass between them. The guy started shooting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. John fell to the ground and the shooter took off running. I couldn't see John anymore. There were some low hedges that separated the driveways, and laying on the ground, he was too low for me to see. I needed to get him help, though he might be bleeding out. I started to run to him. About the same time, something exploded out of the hedges. John and I pretty much slammed into each other. He was fine. By sheer luck, not a single round had hit him. Cops came, took a report, said they probably wouldn't be able to find the guy and left. Story 29. Friend's 18th, legal age here. Started at 5, went until 12. A grand old time was had by all, especially the new 18-year-old. He had been drinking a lot of straight vodka. I'm talking well over half the bottle in 3 hours. As any self-respecting 18-year-old would do, he disregarded his parents' advice to stop drinking. He was laughing and staggering around, and then he collapsed, alive but down. For the rest of the night, he was with his nurse mother, who kept his head tilted. At 8 p.m., the man barely got through half of his 18th. For the rest of the time, the rest of us sat around the charcoals of the bonfire, which at its peak was so big and hot that you needed to be a solid 15-20 meters away. Occasionally, we would hear what must have just been air escaping his lungs, and then a very loud hiccup. Then he got wheeled by his parents and brother back to their house in a wheelbarrow, while we shouted the happy birthday song to him. Pretty bad from his perspective, ducking gold from ours. Story 30. I was upstairs at this party playing a piano for whatever reason, and there was one of the biggest guys in our year passed out on the floor. He was a banana and seemed all right, so I left him. After about 20 minutes, someone else comes up and shouts, "Holy duck, Tom crap himself," and proceeds to run back down to collect everyone. Once they've arrived to observe, the smell hits them, and everyone runs back down, gagging. The girl who was hosting the party called the guy's gran to come and get him, which he starts to protest to once he wakes up. His gran arrives and is ducking furious. She's this tiny 4'10" woman, screaming at her massive 6'0" rugby player drunk-ass grandson. 10 minutes of this, and they decide to leave. Now, the stairs in this place are real steep, and Tom can't walk very well at the minute. As he's descending, he falls right onto my friend. Stick-thin girl, weights 110 max, fully takes her out. Now remember, Tom crap himself, and he has landed directly on top of my friend. Turns out, the crap had evacuated his clothing all over my friend. She vomited, 3 other people proceed to vomit on them, and Tom's gran drags her disgrace of a grandson home. Story 31. Probably the time this guy Tyler somehow managed to vomit and crap all over the bathroom. He was on medics and drunk, and apparently was puking really hard, and started crapting himself, lacking the awareness to do the old sit on the toilet and puke in the tub maneuver. That's what he said, at least. I don't know how it's possible though, because that liquid crap was all over the walls, like 3-4 feet high. It wasn't even his house, and lacking any change of clothes or anything to clean himself with, he apparently used the host's girlfriend's bikini top to wipe the crap off himself, slipped on his crafty clothes, and ran out the front door with little crap falling out of his pants leg. The host was by that time completely unconscious from drinking, so his girlfriend, who doesn't live there mind you, spends the entire night cleaning it up. Remarkably, they were all still friends after that. It was the first night I'd met any of them. When Tyler left town for a year and came back, the girlfriend tried everything in her power to get a huge banner reading, "Welcome home, crap boy." But when we got it priced, it was like decided against it. I've had way more ducked-up crap happen when folks were hanging out, but oddly enough, the crap that happened at official parties was always relatively tame. Nobody ever got shot at any of our parties, that's for sure. Shot at maybe, but not shot. Story 32. Lots and lots of attempted abuse. There are some guys who would see a passed-out woman and think that's prime opportunity right there. Pick them up off the couch or whatever and try to carry them off like it was no big deal. Story 33. Someone locked themselves in the toilet. Well, what do you do when you need to go and you're out of options? Pee out the window. We were on the 5th floor. Story 34. Cousin had a pretty big house party back in 2006. 3 guys decided their egos were more important than the lives of people at a party. They got their ass kicked for saying extremely vulgar things to a girl they didn't even know. Happened to be me and my cousin's buddy's girlfriend. The 3 of them get into a fight with the buddy and 2 others from our group. The 3 intruders were beat up pretty good. They left the party and apparently broke into a house a block away, came back to the party, and lost my buddy in the front yard, in front of about 30 witnesses. The gun was a .22, and thankfully he was a pretty bad shot. I want to say I heard 6 shots, I was running and in a panic, but my buddy was only hit twice. The shooter was no more than 10 feet from my buddy. It was so surreal. The guys we thought were well into their 20s were actually 15, 16, and 17. The party was on a Friday. They went to school, which is directly behind the house where the party was, the next Monday and were arrested there. A bunch of us had to testify. They did it to impress their gang leader, who was at the party, who was also a very close friend with me and my cousin. We grew up together. The guy they hit was also a very close friend, and the guy they were trying to impress. He was not impressed. The house was being used for all sorts of questionable sales that benefited said gang leader. Not to mention we had known the guy since we were 12 years old. I was 21 and had never seen anything like it. His ghost white face while he was squirming on the ground and begging us not to let him pass is burned into my brain. The feeling of helplessness and panic to that degree is also something that doesn't seem to go away. The grass was stained with his blood for years afterward. The house is still in my family and I go there often. I can't let myself think about it too much while there because that feeling comes back. The 3 kids were all convicted and sentenced to something around 12 years. My buddy who was shot recovered but still can't use his left hand much. He also continued to live life recklessly. His entire idea of fun was getting ducked up and fighting. I eventually lost touch with him and much of the group. It greatly affected me and my cousin. I didn't stop living a life of substances and debauchery until years later, but that night I decided to stop fighting random people for stupid reasons, which had been my whole group's reason for existence for the last 3 years leading up to that. My cousin stopped hanging around the group and got his GED and tried to get on the police force. We are all doing relatively well now. Me and my cousin often talk about that night and tell the story. Story 35. Friend and I organized a party for a holiday event for people who were still in town. It was a week most students left to family. We decided we wanted to make a party for those who had nowhere else to go. It all goes fine till about 1 o'clock. This one guy we don't really know but a friend brought is getting increasingly more drunk and, we later find out, high on several substances, amphetamines and pot we think. He's slurring and barely standing and just clearly supposed to go home. He's talking to another guy we know and this guy is increasingly more uncomfortable. This drunk mother ducker is clearly not keeping his crap together well. So we head to the friend that brought him, and on the down low we basically tell him, hey, your friend has partied enough, can you find a way to get him home? He's clearly off this planet. So our friend goes and grabs him and he makes his way to the hallway with him to grab his shoes and jacket and get him the duck out. All pretty calm, not making a big deal off of it, just bringing him home. In the process of putting his shoes on, I see him getting louder and starting becoming a bit belligerent. So I move closer with a friend, and my co-host, who happens to walk past him, a tiny skinny bit of a woman, walks by and he suddenly lunges at her and grabs her. I don't know exactly what went down in the next 10 seconds, but next thing I know, someone got the girl loose. The guys were holding the guy by the arms. I had him lifted from the ground by the throat, and the girl he grabbed at was trying to peel my fingers off of him because I was clearly choking him out. I let go and walk away while he is yelling some of the foulest crap I've heard in my life after me, looking like he is actually planning on hitting me. He is still being held back by 2 dudes, and I leave the room to let them take care of it. They managed to get him out of the apartment somehow, and we lock the door hoping he'll just duck off. Next thing we know, he's trying to smash the door in. My co-host goes to the door, and what she says is an attempt to talk him down and get him to leave, but when she sees the guy, she suddenly flares up red and flings herself at the dude. We pull her off of him this time. Another guy standing at about 6'4" grabs him and physically launches him outside. We call the cops on his ass while another friend of ours is trying to keep him calm outside. They find substances on him as well, so he's got a nice charge on his record for that. We later find out that at some point before all this, he also pissed himself on the couch. Turns out he's an army dude with PTSD and something triggered his ass. People told me this like I should have sympathy for this a whole, and I have a lot of sympathy for people with mental disorders, as I have them too, but I saw the bruises on the collarbone of my friend. I cannot bring a shred of sympathy for that dude. Forgot to mention that once he got outside, he kept shouting he'd burn the entire place down with everyone in it. Story 36. In sophomore year of college, my friends and I held a pig roast. My freshman year roommate, who was a strange guy and who had not been invited, shows up, completely plastered. He goes on a drunken rant about not being invited. As we stood there, staring at him in shock and horror, he ran away. Story 37. Two bros with reverse snapbacks and deep furs got into a fight and for henceforth be referred to as dude and guy. These are large humans who are the epitome of, do you even lift, bro? Guy threw dude through a wall, stud and all. Dude pulls himself out of the wall like Superman, one hand gripping the edge, falling drywall, snowing from above with a look of, let's get on. He charges guy like a linebacker going in for the sack. Guy crouches ready for it. Dude picks him up and runs right out the front door, taking the flimsy screen door with him and right off the porch, hitting the concrete sidewalk hard, and guy having what's obviously a concussion. Dude is about ground and pound, the ever-loving duck out of guy, and stops when he realizes guy is no longer with us on planet Earth anymore and is seeing birds and stars. Asks him if he's okay. Guy mumbles, and dude helps him up and brings him inside. That's when we see just how ducked up these two made each other. Guy is concussed, and dude has an inch-long cut running across his forehead. Dude apologizes to guy and starts crying. Guy starts crying, and they hug. Dude then asks if he wants to see a card trick, and the party resumes. Story 38. An ex of mine had a friend who was in high school pass at a party. She apparently got pretty wasted and fell down the basement steps, hitting her head, and a couple of girls picked her up and put her on the couch with them to pass out, and she passed in her sleep. Story 39. I was at a pretty messed up party at a friend's cabin in the mountains. I was slightly naive and about 17 at the time, and there were 4 girls, including me, and about 5 or 6 guys there. Most of the guys apparently shot up speed not long after we got there, which I hadn't known they would be doing, while the rest of us just drank beers. The guys on speed then ran around in the snow, mostly naked for a bit. One of them then found an axe and had a kind of meltdown and was waving the axe around the cabin and going off at everyone. Pretty scary. Next morning, it turned out one of the guys had shat himself while high and spread it all around the walls and behind the heater with his shoe when he was trying to get rid of it. So one of the girls had to clean it up. The guy who shat himself had been a crush until then, but yeah, not after that crap. Just remembered, was at another party the year before where a guy went mental and started carving the kitchen bench with a chainsaw, but that was a pretty tame one overall. Story 40. Our friend got too drunk, so he walked outside the front porch and threw up off the balcony right in front of the downstairs neighbor's door. Then, he went to the back balcony and threw up off of it right by their back door. So our downstairs neighbor was trapped by vomit. Story 41. After being forced to drink lots of port, I congratulated the host on the delicious chicken we'd been served. She thanked me, but pointed out it was salmon. Story 42. I saw a guy hit a girl when they were playing beer pong. Everybody in the party jumped on this dude, and I'm pretty sure an ambulance had to come for him. Being a piece of crap has its consequences. Story 43. Beer can nearly full of chew spit. Dude high. He pounded the whole thing, threw the can down, let out a primal scream, and did not vomit. Others did. Story 44. So a friend and I were planning to have a little smoke at his house. On our way back from picking up, we bumped into an acquaintance of his who invited us to a house party that night. We figured we may as well go. We can still smoke there. All good. This was a rough party. There were these 3 brothers who were all trying to outdo each other and how much of a psycho banana head they could be. This one guy decided to grab his girlfriend to show everyone how he'd learned to waterboard people with a cloth and poured water. He did it and just kept going until his other brothers started getting rowdy, because he almost hit her, and a fight starts brewing. And these are big lads. The whole time my friend and I are sat there smoking, trying so hard not to let out a giggle lest we be next. We decided eventually we ought to slip away quietly, as some guys were on about calling the boys. Now things were getting serious. As we were leaving, we could hear tires screeching up to the house, and we were glad we left. Anyway, it turned out one brother ended up stabbing another, not fatally, and a few people got arrested. So glad we left when we did. Story 45. I have 3. The first is my younger sister, and I had an apartment when we were in our late teens. We threw this party that got way out of control. Next thing I know, people are complaining that someone is in the bathroom and won't get out. There's only one bathroom. We pound on the door, finally. A 20-something dude and this late teens girl come out. They split the party. Someone tells me he is her high school teacher. We were just out of high school, so it didn't seem as crazy as it does now. I went to another party that got way out of control, lots of substances, people too young drinking, Then a dude starts waving a stolen Colt 1911 around. I just bolted. The last, my nephew told me. He tells me he was at a high school party at a friend's, and some crazy older guy is there. Totally insane. Says the house is on fire, and throws a chair through the picture window and jumps out through it, running away. I asked him what happened next. He said, "Oh, the house burned to the ground." Like that was an unimportant detail to the story. Story 46. I saw the trifecta. Was at a college party at VT when a girl was on her way to the bathroom, decided to have a bodily fluid meltdown. In the hallway to the bathroom, she started puking, pooped her skirt, yeah, not pants, and 3, after lying on the ground for a couple minutes, also peed. Interestingly enough, this was at like 10 p.m. and the parents of the college kids hosting the party were there, and I heard one of them murmur, "They don't party like we used to." Story 47 happened a few years ago. I was staying with some friends of friends for the weekend while I was looking for a place in a new city. They were nice enough, complete hippies, but nice people. Anyway, they were having a party the night that I arrived, which was fun, drinking beers and smoking weed. Overall, a good time. I noticed people occasionally trickling off to a back room throughout the night. I figured this was the hard substances room, which it was. Nothing insane, but people were railing lines of substances off a dresser in there all night long. Anyway, I'm chilling on the couch, smoking, attempting to mac on some hippie girl. All of a sudden, the door to that back room just bursts open. 2 people are basically dragging this guy out of the room. He looks super ducked up, eyes kind of rolled back, no color in his face, just looks real bad. They proceed to take him out the front door, into a car, and drive off into the night. Whatever happened, I know that he ended up okay. But after that, the party definitely cleared out pretty quick. It was pretty unsettling for everyone that watched it happen. Guy looked 2 steps away from death. Still not sure what exactly happened. If he was doing something else, mixing things together, or just straight up OD'd. Story 48. Just fights. It's always ducking fights. I grew up knowing which parties to avoid, because certain ones would always end with either the cops or a hit, and then the cops. Too many folks get drunk and then get real mean. I think it's more often mean folks who've found an excuse to be so. Story 49. I see my friend chug a 5th of Jaeger, and then about an hour later, he was standing in the living room, pissing onto the floor, as well as his pants that were around his ankles. Story 50. This sounds really bad, but since the guy didn't suffer any permanent damage, and the guys who did it to him got their comeuppance, it's generally looked back on as just being a wild party. End of GCSE exams about 10 years ago, and in my town, there's a nice park that's really central that all the kids from all the high schools go to and start drinking and celebrating, like about 200 plus 16 youths, all getting drunk and stoned on the park. The party was mental, all good fun, except for these 2 well-known dealers from my school who figure it's a good idea to spike one of the other kids with mix of whatever they had on them, all into his drink. Bear in mind this kid was already really drunk. Next thing you know, he's charging around fully naked, jumping through bushes, and eventually climbs a wall with barbed wire at the top. Guy was an absolute mess, but fortunately the police and an ambulance turned up pretty quickly. We'll never forget the sight of him, naked and bloody, getting chased across the park by these police. The guy who got spiked didn't suffer any real injuries and got a reputation for being a legendary partier, so he wasn't too upset. 10-10 party, we'll never forget. What's the craziest thing you ever saw or did at a party? Story 1. I had a friend who was notorious for blacking out at parties. Usually he was a friendly drunk, but every once in a while, Mr. Hyde would come out to play. During a previous bout of drunken belligerence, he had been banned from a local bar. Unfortunately, a few weeks later, after blacking out again at a party, we wound up at the same bar, drunken friend in tow. Bar staff recognized him, and after trying unsuccessfully to try to get him to leave, called the cops to have him arrested for trespassing. While he had refused to leave the bar, he was being a very friendly drunk nonetheless. When the cops arrive, he drunkenly but cheerfully greets them and readily agrees to leave with them. As he is being escorted from the bar, he calls shotgun on the 2 officers. Apparently he had been friendly enough thus far, and they actually let him ride up front on the way back to the station, while the other cops sat in the cage and back. Story 2. Back in high school, my buddy was having a party at his house that his family had not moved in yet, but were planning on moving in the next day. Everyone got wasted, 2 dudes start wrestling in the living room. One of the guys smashes the other dude's head through the wall. The entire room of 30 people went silent. I yell out, "Who here can drive?" Because I sure as hell couldn't at that time. Some girl drove me to my parents' house. We were in the process of renovating a room at that time. I busted in at 2 a.m., walked to the room, cut a massive piece of drywall out of the wall, grabbed some screws and a drill. Parents asked WTF I was doing, told them nothing and ran out with the supplies, drove back to the party where everyone is trying to figure out what to do. Patched the hole with my parents to drywall, textured and painted the patch, looked all right. The next day his parents are none the wiser. That patch is still there to this day, 5 years later. Also, the next day when I returned home, my parents were still confused as to why I cut a massive piece of dry wall out of our wall at 2 a.m. Told them the story, we laughed it off. The good news was that wall was coming down anyway. Was glad I cut the correct wall because I sort of remember playing a little guessing game that night as to which wall was the correct wall. Story 3. A high school party I was at was busted by the overly aggressive local police force. Needless to say, half the party bolted out the back door and over the fence in the back. Little did we know, more police officers were waiting on the next street over and began chasing people. One kid screamed at the top of his lungs, "I'm the hide-and-seek master," and then dove headfirst into a leaf pile. Kid stayed there for a good 2 hours and watched a lot of his friends get caught. This happened in upstate New York, and no, I was not the kid that hid in the leaf pile. He actually didn't get caught and ended up walking home at around 4:30 a.m. I was fortunate enough to hop into a buddy's car as he pulled away. Actually scared the crap out of him because he didn't know I was behind him. Story 4. At a geologist party. It's all grad students and their profs. Some dude is mixing liquid substances and he gets blitzed and goes for a walk to the supermarket. He comes back with a watermelon. He takes off his clothes and goes to sleep in the host's bed. She yells at him. He comes back out to the party in his underwear and starts dancing with his watermelon. Waltzing. He falls on the watermelon and it explodes everywhere. He rolls on his back in the watermelon and his junk pops out of his shorts in front of all his peers and professors. I went home with a cougar and duck on her couch, listening to Noma Ye. Story 5. This is not mine. I just remember saving it. If anyone knows whose this is, I encourage you to say something. So, one of my friends is in a frat. They were having a party, and some guy was dressed up as Captain Jack Sparrow. Awesome, I know. Anyways, the cops show up, and the party is on the 3rd floor. Captain Sparrow looks at them when they come in, throws open the window and yells, "Gentlemen, you will forever remember this as the day you almost caught Captain Jack Sparrow," and jumped out the window. Broke both legs, still got his minor in possession. Story 6. May not be the craziest thing, but I still thought it was funny. There was this obnoxious, not so attractive girl who used to love to be escorty and just randomly take her clothes off. Trust me, it was really annoying. So one night there was a bonfire in the backyard of our usual party house. She got tanked, started removing her clothes. She had her pants and panties around her ankles and was just bending over in front of people. And then bam, sniper on the roof. My friend had a fully automatic airsoft gun and just started unloading into her body from the 2nd-story window looking over the backyard. It lasted about 10 seconds, just short of being considered cruel in my opinion. Needless to say, she never did it again. Story 7. I was 6 and I put the round ball confetti in my ears to see how it feels like to go deaf. Had to get an operation. Story 8. Met a guy who was supposedly drunk, had taken a couple pills and, just a little bit of ecstasy to top things off. After trying to choke me out, he then proceeded to tell me that he had lost his human and he wasn't allowed to move until his human told him to, or the werewolves were gonna come get him. During the conversation, I also convinced him that I was 21 centuries old and was, in fact, a very powerful wizard. Story 9. I saw a guy attempt to snort a shot of tequila. His face turned tomato red and tears were streaming down his face while he was suffocating. I seriously thought he was gonna die. Story 10. Friend's bachelor party. We took a party bus to Chicago from Indiana. I blacked out before we even got there. Wandered the streets and came back to an all-black club where I was chilling by myself in the corner. I'm not black. Went outside and a homeless guy high-fived me and knew me by name. Didn't know where I was and asked the cops to take me back to where I was staying, and they did. Story 11. At a friend's house. His room is separated from the downstairs area by the kind of fogged glass. One night, he has a party, and this couple started having sex in his bed. The thing is, no one could really see them because it was dark, but the other guests caught on when the girl was louder than the music. So, like the a-holes my friends are, they turned up the lights a little, just in time to see what was later referred to as Daisy Pukes. Apparently, the girl tried to finish, but her grip slipped a little and she proceeded to set off a chain reaction unlike anything we'd ever seen. Her slipped hand punched him the balls. As she fell forward, she hit her gag reflex and puked all over his junk. He puked all over her back from pain, drunkenness, saw a reaction to feeling her stomach contents spill over his junk. This all happened within the course of a few seconds. It was the ultimate party foul to my memory. Story 12. I went to a party where a guy got drunk enough that he went into a closet thinking it was a bathroom, crap in the closet and threw up on himself, and then passed out in the closet. 4 guys had to drag him out, and for some reason they lost his pants. I'll try to find the picture of him. Story 13. Kid randomly walked out of a party we were having. He was blacked out and nobody heard from him for a while. Got a call about 2 hours later from a taxi driver on his phone. Apparently, our friend asked to go to the airport and didn't have his wallet to pay, so the driver was about to kick him out on the side of the road. He came back with a whole bottle of vodka and still no wallet.